Hello, everyone, and welcome to this Lorandom podcast. I'm your host, Peter Bauman, Lorandom's editor-in-chief, and today our Friday episodes return as a companion to our Monday editorials. And this week, those two things are very much related because today's episode is about the AI Psychosis Summit that took place on April 30th in New York. And I'm speaking with two out of the four co-founders of the summit, Macy Gettles and Quasimatt, as well as Kevin Esherick, one of the exhibiting artists, and also the writer of Monday's editorial, which was aptly named, "What was the AI Psychosis Summit?" So if you want to know that answer, read that piece, but also, of course, continue listening to this conversation where we discuss that in depth. So I can't wait to share it. And this was such an interesting chat with one of, I think, the most relevant events of the year. So I was honored to talk to them and can't wait to share it. So let's begin. Thank you guys for joining. I've been admiring from afar because I'm based in Europe, and so I didn't get to go to the show myself, but I kind of put the organization or like the community in the same category of others that I think are really interesting and pushing technology and art in really interesting ways. And so that include Basel Social Club and the Glitch residency in France, these kind of like unself-conscious DIY art scenes. So like also things like Stochastic Labs and Gray Area, like on the West Coast. And like, how do you see the summit or the community? Yeah, what do you even call it? How do you guys think of it? And what is the AI Psychosis Summit, and or what was it? And I guess we can just kind of start there.
Oh, sure. Well, I was just thinking it was like, I'll give the broader framework because it just came to my head that it was kind of a meme that turned into a scene that turned into a movie. And now we're kind of in this like post-movie era where we like loved the event. It was awesome. So Matt, I feel like has a more intellectual way to say that.
I mean, I feel like that's like sentimentally captures it. But I guess just to start from the very beginning, like the AI Psychosis Summit was essentially a showcase of projects that a number of artists and practitioners made using AI. So like Kevin was one of the artists in the show. There were other people who made things that were more adjacent to like products or like an MVP. And it happened in Chinatown kind of in the evening. And people just came through and were able to talk to all of the artists and practitioners about what they had made with AI. I think like the interesting thing about it being considered like an art thing is that it kind of like slowly happened over time. I think when we first were talking about the AI Psychosis Summit and like the way that it came together, it was just like a way to talk to people about the way that they were using AI. And I remember like at the very beginning, like we started to refer to the people that we were recruiting to be involved as artists, like just kind of, it was like a slow process. And then sometimes I would say artists and I would go, oh, and practitioners, because I didn't really want to like push that on what it was. Like I was like, I don't really know if this is art. So I guess like in retrospect, it was an art show, but like it was supposed to be just like people getting together and having fun and talking about AI.
And from my vantage point, it felt like very organic in that way, where there was never like so we're going to do this, like this is the vision. It's going to be this great art show or anything. I don't know. It was more just like a vibe. They just were talking about having the AI Psychosis Summit, and I was like, cool, what's the vibe? And they were like, it's sort of like science fair, art fair thing-ish, but it was like very ambiguous and broad and all-encompassing in scope. And coming from more of an art background, I was like, I have a place to shill my art. So great. So for me, it was an art thing. I didn't even really know how Quasimatt or Macy saw it. So yeah, interesting to hear how they've thought about it all. Although I think we all kind of like arrived at it in a similar way, where it was like this thing and it like sort of gravitated toward an art-ish label, but still like isn't and never was explicitly so.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like you're talking about the vibe as, it's something that doesn't really take seriously distinctions between like art and tech and science. And these things are kind of treating them more as arbitrary and also I think their distinctions becoming less clear-cut as we move forward and with how they're all kind of merging. And I think that the most interesting parts of contemporary art are the places that are surfacing that. And I guess I'm curious too about like how people were mostly engaging with AI in the show. Was it like I guess can you give a sense of like just the variety or the different kinds of ways that people were using it? Because I think it gets kind of pigeonholed a lot as like a generator of images or text or music.
I mean, do you guys want to share like just the projects you brought to it first of all? Because those are like great examples of like how eclectic it can be, and then we can go off into other projects too.
Oh, sure. Well, I kind of felt like it was like a space for devs to be artists, and then artists could be devs, like in a shitty way. Like, oh, it's like, hey, it's like not that serious. So like go ahead and just like make an art product if you're a dev. Or like, hey, it's not that serious. Like I'm a visual artist. It's like just make art with AI. Like it's not that big of a deal. And so like for me, I used it to like make this like AI poster. It's like right there. That was like funny to me in like a way that I probably wouldn't have explored that like with my drawing or painting practice. And then like I had a friend who made a video game who like does like, you know, he's like a software engineer on a finance company. And so it's like to put his like talent or skill or whatever into something creative was like cool on both sides. For like that is how I saw it, I guess.
Yeah, my project was the Shake app, which is like, now I'm considering it more of like a commercially viable like social media application. But at the time, I think I was like thinking of it more as art. And I think there were other people that also had apps. Like there was someone who made a kind of like a therapy adjacent app. There was someone who was making something that was like using astrological data to invest. There were people who were doing AI projects with autotune. There was visual art from Shlomes, and other people used AI to do like various music projects. So it was really like across the board people were using AI. And then like, I mean, Kevin can talk about his stuff, but Kevin and Maury Coleman, I think like did something kind of against the grain, which is that their work wasn't on screens, but they used AI to produce it, or it was like commentary on AI in a way. So there wasn't really like everything involved AI in some way, but it was really like across a lot of different mediums and exploring a lot of different ideas.
Yeah, some of the stuff was also like live interactive work. There was a screen where you could like go stand in front of and like move your hands, and there'd be live like generative visual distortions happening based on what you did. And then Bunny was doing like a live DJ set, like touch designer AI vibe coding. And then yeah, for Maury and I, it was like art but rooted in AI processes. Like Maury, also known as WTT.M online, he showed some stuff based off of the MNIST handwriting data set. And then my works were a series of homages, which is a body of work I've built out where I've trained AI models on the works of other artists and then made new works in their style using those models. And in this case, it was kind of two-layered because for the present year, I am in the midst of this performance where an AI model trained on me is making all of my work for me. So I gave it the constraints of the show and like told it what was going on. And it came up with an idea to extend my homages concept, but to other artists in this show. And so then it came up with ideas to homage Shlomes and Maury. And so it did a performance for Shlomes and then a digital work for Maury. And then I also just brought a couple of my homage paintings from my Heft show in February. So like in the case of the Shlomes piece, it was a performance that was made by an AI model trained on me, taking the vantage point of Shlomes to come up with an idea for what a Shlomes homage would look like. So it's like very, I don't know, there are a lot of different ways in which the AI manifested in the work, both, yeah, even just like across the layers of that one project and then throughout the show. It was really all over the place. And I think that's what gave it like a lot of its appeal.
Yeah, I think that breadth and depth kind of demonstrate the diversity and like the creative potential of of AI broadly as a material, and makes it harder for, I guess, it to be pigeonholed, like in terms of like criticism. Again, like I think people only think about it in terms of image, text, and maybe now music generation, and so I think that when you only think about it or in that kind of limited way, I think that impacts how you feel about it. And so a lot of people seem to have negative, like visceral negative reactions to it. And I'm sure you've all experienced it, and maybe even more firsthand than I have. And yeah, so people tend to have strong feelings about it. And, but then on the other hand, it's wildly popular. I mean, ChatGPT is the most popular and most downloaded app, and it has been, I think, like for the last like 20 months or something like that. And it's actually not even like close to like number 2. And yeah, like so there's a lot of indication like Gemini and Anthropic are also kind of up there. Like more people have the Anthropic app downloaded in 2026 than Spotify, which I thought was just like, that kind of blew my mind a little bit. I was like, it's still Gemini and ChatGPT are like way ahead of Claude too. How, as a community, have you kind of experienced all these different feelings towards AI, especially the negative ones? How have you sort of internalized it as a community? What's been your experience with it and your understanding of it, I suppose?
I was shouted down on a panel last year, which was a mostly just kind of funny experience, but like was a little stressful at the time. I don't really want to go into like the specifics of what it was all about. It wasn't like targeted at me as opposed to the others on the panel as well. Sophia Garcia and Adam Berninger from Heft were there, and then India Price, who you maybe know. So I really like, I had seen the discourse online up to that point, a lot of hate for AI artists, and yeah, AI artist itself, like basically being a slur. And that really made it manifest for me. I'm curious, Matt and Macy, if you guys have encountered stuff like this.
If anything, I think we use like the hate as a way to market the summit. You know, I think like a lot of people have like a unnatural relationship with AI just because it is like so new and fresh, and you know, we're like, okay, wait, should we like this thing or should we not? And I think like what the AI Psychosis Summit did was like take like a non-stance on if AI was good or bad, and was just like, oh, by the way, like we're all doing this, so like here's a freaking showcase for it. And it's like, I think that was the power of the summit to begin with, is like it didn't take a stance really necessarily.
Yeah, totally. I think like when the organizers, so that was like me, Macy, Wissam, and Bunny, when we were talking about the AI Psychosis Summit, before it happened, we were like very adamant that we were not going to like publicly take any sort of strong stance on AI, just because to us it's a distraction. I think like a lot of what the AI Psychosis Summit was, and why it's like confusing whether it was like about art or technology, is because we naturally subjugate everything to like a social experience. And so like for us, or at least for me, the AI Psychosis was primarily a social experience that benefited from a very dense network of people who just so happen to be interested in certain types of art and certain types of technology. And so rather than engaging with people who don't like AI for this reason or that reason and trying to debate them or something like that, I think it's more powerful to show them that you can have a pro-social experience that relies on AI. Like showing people that we can get in a room and all have fun and connect with one another because we use AI and we enjoy using AI is so much more powerful than like trying to make some sort of reasoned argument about how no, AI actually doesn't waste water, or no, you're not going to lose your job. And so I think we were trying to show rather than tell, and just like literally have fun and hopefully like convince people that AI is a little bit make them more open to AI along the way. And I did talk to some people at the summit for whom that was the case, like people who became more sympathetic to AI use or more optimistic about it.
There were definitely people who were like kind of coming in ready to hate. And I felt like I talked to at least a couple who were moved in some capacity, like by what they saw there, and were like, okay, like I'm interested in what can be done with this now. I think there were also people who came in there ready for a symposium or like
Yeah,
a group therapy
Yeah.
session. And then when they found out it wasn't that, we're primed to hate. And then we're maybe won back a little bit as they started to see like more of the layers to the kinds of work being displayed and the maybe agnosticism in the attitudes toward it. Like I think plenty of people in there were probably like pro acceleration, and others like have a more critical stance. Like my work while working with AI is very deliberately and explicitly like trying to ask questions of it, not just to be like rah rah AI serving as a cheerleader for it, but like asking what this is going to do to our lives and taking it as, you know, a given that this is going to be part of our future, but trying to steer that toward the best future it can be with it.
Yeah, I think again, like that's why it reminded me of Glitch, the residency in France, is because at the end of the 2 weeks, there's this art exhibition called Room Service where all the residents present work in a different space in the chateau where the residency takes place. And yeah, it's this kind of hodgepodge. It's DIY. It's very bottoms up. It's very like anti-white cube, and it's very weird and experimental, and if you kind of, it's a very limited experience because you have to be in that space. But yeah, it kind of reminds me of the most powerful art experiences that I've had, like Basel Social Club, where the relational aesthetics is just as much a part of it, and also just how much that aligns with contemporary art's current emphasis on creating spaces of emergence, and just how art and technology are so good at that in particular, and just the different types of relations that are possible now because of these new intelligences that we're kind of dreaming up and creating. And yeah, I think it's really interesting to showcase that stuff. But again, like the mainstream, I guess, would still be looking at AI from a kind of point of distaste, and then the aesthetics of, rather than kind of mainstream aesthetics going more like tech experimental, they've kind of gone more like cottagecore. And yeah, I just wonder how you guys see that, like that if anything, we now have these like really interesting tools, but it seems like the backlash is so severe that there's more of a rejection of them. And I guess it seems to be this kind of like analog romanticism. And I'm kind of curious, what is that nostalgia that they're trying to capture that they think AI maybe is lacking or doesn't have itself? And is that accurate at all? I don't know. What do you guys think?
I find it hilarious that cottagecore is like a cancel culture. Like that conceptually is like hilarious to me. So that probably says I don't really think about it much at all, probably.
Yeah, I think like right now AI like has an aesthetic, but I think that's just like a current limitation. Like AI will transcend having its own aesthetic and will be able to be used to create lots of different aesthetics. And so like I think that being able to clock that something is made with AI will like largely stop happening when it comes to like certain types of art. And I think like one thing that excites me about AI when it comes to aesthetics is I think it has allowed people to do a lot of aesthetic exploration. And it's kind of made me realize that when people have an aesthetic preference as an artist, it sometimes is a matter of convenience rather than of actual preference. So maybe someone uses the same color scheme or the same design because that's what they have as their Figma presets, or like they have some brush on Photoshop that's just easier to use than the rest. And I think like AI kind of gives more access to more aesthetics and allows you to iterate on ideas much more quickly. So I'm really excited about like people using AI to explore new aesthetics and like not be necessarily so dedicated to one thing. And I think I've kind of been seeing that in the way that people like vibe code and the things that people create, like the software products that people create with AI, is that they're like they seem like less standard. And so there's like a sense right now that AI pushes everything into one aesthetic, but I think the future is that AI actually enables the aesthetics to like go all over the place.
Yeah, I would be less hopeful than Matt, maybe. Not that I think that that's not going to be the case, but I find myself just more on the fence that like as you have these things that can fall into like the middle of the Gaussian distribution and are able to just feed us like the mode of any data set that is super easy to fall into. I think, yeah, we all agree that's where we're at now. I am not super optimistic that like in the long term, the plurality of people will be able to like break outside of that mode and go and create new and wild and different things. I'm not necessarily pessimistic about it either. But I do think like at least at the margins, there's like a much greater latitude for doing things that exist outside of our traditional creative boxes. Because you have these tools now that enable you to, like he said, with ease, tap into all different sorts of aesthetics, both in terms of at a simple face value level. You can vibe code something trivially that has aesthetic Z rather than the default aesthetic A, B, or C. But then further than that, there's like the capacity for latent space exploration, or Primavera, who you know, Peter, she had this right-click save post the other day about off-grid aesthetics, and it's basically exactly what I would call like latent space exploration, which is like using the fact that these models are these massive n-dimensional spaces that we can explore. And yes, we are served like the modal output in our typical use of them, but when you actually like dig into the tools, use open source, and try and do strange and different things with them, you can like explore them as these kind of vast wildernesses that can open up new aesthetic frontiers. And that's like how I've largely preferred to use them in my work, like treating the model as a kind of space or a material to be explored or sculpted, and to try and like find new forms of beauty that were previously inaccessible to the world without something like this. So I think like on that end, it's very hopeful for like the people who are willing to put in some effort to deviate from the norm. I think there's a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think a lot of talk about AI aesthetics tend to center around slop. And to me, a lot of slop discourse is just a failure of imagination and or just a misunderstanding of what this kind of technology or like force like enables, like which is the ability to explore latent spaces. And I also think kind of mistaking, like you were talking about, Matt, like this kind of like GAN aesthetic for some kind of like lasting visual aesthetics of AI. And I don't think that's true. If anything, AI is moving us beyond visual aesthetics. It's kind of showing that the image is becoming, less viable. You can conjure anyone at any time, basically, with just like a few, with the prompt. And so it's moving people beyond the aesthetics of the image and more to the relational aesthetics that we're talking about. And that I think the summit was tapping into, that people want to get together and relate to one another, especially in these days where they don't have as many opportunities as maybe they have in the past because of things like, I don't know, religion or like whatever kind of community groups that they're in. So I think the aesthetics are more about a kind of cyber relational aesthetics with humans and these other intelligences, and the kind of electron cloud that produces, as opposed to something lastingly visual, is kind of, I don't know how I see it. One thing that I think is interesting about how critics approach AI is like they kind of have this, in my view, they underestimate it. And what I mean is like they hate it so much that they see it as something that they want to go away, and then they kind of fantasize about it going away because it's not improving fast enough. It's it's plateauing, or it's hallucinating too much. It's not even useful. Basically, every argument that Gary Marcus has ever had, or whatever, people like him. and like so, then the latest one is kind of one by one. These have kind of fallen, or like kind of, I don't know, shown that they're not super accurate, like especially the ones about how it's improving or not improving, is like that it's a bubble. And they kind of like want it to go, like they kind of fantasize about it being a bubble because bubbles burst and then they go away and then you don't hear about them anymore. But I think if anything, that's kind of minimizing what AI actually is, to think that it could be, you know, I don't know, burst away and just disappear or whatever, because Meta is spending a lot on CapEx. But I guess I just wonder, like, how do you guys see like the most like prominent critiques? Is there any truth in them? Like, how do you kind of see them or address them?
Well, actually, before we get into that, I just want to like talk about something that you said before that, because I really like this kind of idea that visual art is maybe waning in importance or something. Like, I don't know exactly how you would put it, but like I have always seen art as like a reference to something that is more alive and exciting. And so for me, like art is all about its social context and the ideas that it embodies. Like I'm really into conceptual art. And I think that like deprioritizing the process of making things, which is what I think AI does to a large extent, allows people to focus more on that social context than on the work itself, which to me has like always been the point. Like the point of the AI Psychosis Summit, for example, was not what people were making. That was a catalyst. That was something that was involved, and it was an important part of the process. But what really mattered was like the community that formed around it. And so I am like, this is what I like most about AI, is that it gets rid of all these things that I just kind of see as annoying, which is like that you have to like have a craft and like make a physical object, so that we can focus on the fun part, which is like drama between people, the ideas that they share, like having some sort of like movement, like all of this like more abstract stuff is more exciting to me, which is why I'm like so obsessed with and addicted to AI art.
Yeah, 100% agree.
As a conceptual artist.
I like totally disagree though.
Yeah,
like, but that's just like about my like personal practice of like art making is like totally all about the process. So I feel like I'm interacting with AI in like a completely different way, where like the things I'm making are empowering the business side of me that like I wasn't able to code before, or I wasn't able to organize my thoughts in like an efficient way. And so I get that though, because a dev might think the same thing, where it's like the process is so important. And so it's like, how could you, you know, bastardize the process while using AI? And so I feel like it's been a like lesson for everyone to kind of just like stop really caring, or like pour your efforts into like what you care about. It's like, if I care about process, then like go ahead and care about your process. Like that's kind of like the point. I think that's what like AI is showing everyone. It's like, oh, you don't have to actually think like everybody else, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. I think like what you're saying about process make, like it's not like that I don't, maybe I like overstated what I was saying. It's not that I'm not interested in process. It's that I think that there is like an interesting part of the process, which is like, how does creating art influence your life and your social relationships? And then like the uninteresting part that I kind of don't care about, which is like, oh, you like learned how to paint for 4 years. Like, okay. Yeah. So it's like, there's a certain part of the process that's interesting. I just think like not all of it is interesting.
Well, I completely agree with that. Like,
I think it brings like, so part of the reason I guess a big reason we're having this conversation and is just Kevin's piece and about the summit. And one of the parts that I liked was the definition, or one of Kevin's ways of describing AI psychosis. And that was like states of excitement and obsession bordering at times on euphoria or hypomania induced by the vast realm of possibilities unlocked by AI tools. It reminds me of what you were saying, Matt, that and what you were saying, Macy, too, that what these tools are also doing is removing barriers to whatever your creative, whatever is blocking you creatively before. So if it was like, oh, you needed a dev to do that, and you had to like maybe explain to him and like, or her in like a very minute detail, like everything you needed done, like you don't need that anymore. And so it's like opening a lot of possibilities, especially with computation, in a way that I think like processing did 25 years ago, where people realize like, oh, this can also be art now. When like talking about like that definition from Kevin's, like I guess like that feeling, I think we've all experienced it. Like I think whenever Claude releases like this new update, and it feels like it's changed everything again or something like that. I guess, how was that show, or like how was the summit, or how does the community also like responding to these changes? Is that part of what kind of brings everybody together? Was this this excitement around, I guess, like how fast things are changing, and then like what that then enables you to do.
Well, I was gonna say my favorite part of the Kevin's piece was how like I feel like you did a really good job of like making sure that everyone knew that it was like very much like a there was this like online supplement that was like equally as fun as the event, which was like everybody talking about the event. And so I feel like that was like a perfect way to describe this whole like AI psychosis thing. It's like that euphoria part of it. It's like, it's not all that different from what we're doing already. It's like, oh my God, you're all laughing about a tweet. And it's like, are we in real life in person together? No. But is there this kind of joy that's sparking? Yes. And so I think like to think of like AI psychosis as this like supplementary thing that's like making life a little bit more silly and fun in a way that you're doing already when you post a funny Instagram story or whatever like that, it kind of like creates this like unseriousness that like I think, Kevin, you contextualized well, because that was like a huge part of the summit, in my opinion, was like it being like half online, half in person kind of.
Yeah, and I think those like energies having pre-existed online is a big part of where the success of the summit came from, in that you talk about this, I don't know, hypomanic or whatever state, Peter. It felt like there had been this thing like bubbling up online over the last, like in the run up to the show, like last 5 months or so, in kind of like what you could call the post Claude Code moment, where like all of a sudden everyone was like making all of these things and you like couldn't get it out fast enough. And so there's this like frantic mindset, and that mostly was like being exchanged online. Like we're sharing tweets, we're commenting, stuff like that. But then the summit, in providing a real physical place for those people to meet up and to share projects that had been brewing over that period, became this kind of like outlet. And so I felt like all of that energy that Macy, you discuss, and that had just been like building up online, was like concentrated into this place, and kind of was able to like rapturously explode in the form of this very fun and electric event.
Yeah, I think like Kevin's description of AI psychosis and like the hypomania is definitely more accurate. I think like one thing that we had noticed with AI psychosis amongst our friends was that like a lot of people are so excited about AI that they will do this like super circular recursive thing where they get obsessed with their AI stack and their tooling. And it seems like it's like you're obsessed with technology so that you can build technology that builds technology that builds technology, and like no part of it is ever human. And I think like the AI Psychosis Summit, because you were going to go in front of someone and show them how you used AI to express yourself, required that you actually finally, for some people, think about the end point. Like what do you actually want to do with AI that's not just very literally about improving your AI efficiency or something like that. And so I think that was a big part of it, is like there's this excitement that goes in a circle and it's all about AI. And then it's like, okay, well, let's make a social experience that releases all of it. And I think like that was kind of the opportunity that we ended up creating.
Yeah, which I think is like really important to note, because I think, you kind of framed it perfectly, but it's like we've almost become like a tool in service to AI. And I mean that in like a very literal, like non-metaphorical sense. Like there's, you can talk of like the egregore or whatever, like bringing itself into being, or like hyperstitions and stuff like that. But AI is like, in some sense, this technology that is like using humanity to manifest itself, in the same way that like our genes are this entity that use us to replicate themselves. Like that's very real. And I think that's sort of happening with us with AI. We see this with like the idea of RSI, like we're almost at this point of recursive self-improvement in AI. And like the promise or threat of takeoff is kind of looming. And there's talk of like a post-human economy and all of these things. And if we want to remain in control at the center of things, like if we want AI to be a tool in service to us rather than the other way around, then I think like we really need to enter these places together and like engage with humanity and remember what we're doing it for. Because it's so much easier to like he said, get lost like in these just like recursive self-improving tooling loops when you're an individual sitting alone in an apartment, like doing your own thing, and you aren't connected to other people. And so, as Matt also mentioned earlier, like the humanity and the connectedness, the relationality of it all is something that, like, I think is like increasingly super, super crucial to how we like proceed, not only in the arts, but in the world of today. And that was something that I thought was like so powerful about this, is that it existed within like the advanced avant-garde of like what art and social life is today. It was online, it was AI native, but at the same time it grounded all of that in like a human social group that came together in a physical place.
Yeah, again, I'm reminded again of ideas of the relational aesthetics and how that's being centered rather than any kind of formal aesthetic. And I'm also, when you're talking about recursion, I can't help but think about like Yaqui and recursion and contingency, and how like the difference between a circle and a spiral, like recursion as repetition and just kind of as a circle, always going back to where you started, versus recursion with contingency, like with information, and then it becomes a spiral. So you're kind of moving while there's this recursive motion. And I think putting out work like this into the public is a way to gain that contingency. You gain a lot of information by putting all these ideas together with all these different people and creators. And yeah, I think that was one of the real powers of the summit. Yeah, I guess maybe, so we kind of skipped over it, but do you guys want to talk about at the very end, like how it kind of, how it started? Like what was the sort of like founding like moment or like ethos, or like, yeah, what was there kind of any sort of like founding myth for it?
It was a tweet. Yeah, it was a tweet. I tweeted like a tool that I created to like make it was essentially just like a Google font API that like was not all that impressive, but I just like tweeted it anyways. And then a friend of ours was like, oh, I like to make like tools for myself too. And then Matt kind of swooped in, was like, should we do the AI Psychosis Summit? Which was like a joke between friends kind of a thing. And we ended up going and doing like a little show and tell with just 4 of us in a room. And then kind of the memery started, where one of the other people that organized it like took a photo, used AI, filled up the room, and was like, you guys need to come to the next summit, essentially. And that created like a ton of demand for like a real physical thing that like through, you know, a few other posts and like kind of like testing the concept out there, we realized like, oh, there's like a really real demand for like a AI Psychosis Summit in a way that like we kind of were joking, but maybe it's like real life. And then everything, you know, led to be like, you know, and then we already knew people like Kevin who were making awesome things with AI. It was like very easy to just like swoop like our current network like in with us, which I think is what made it so magical. Is like it very much was like a, okay, let's just do this kind of a thing that turned into, you know, like almost an art object in itself, I guess.
I mean, that's the story.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, nothing to add.
I'm really interested in how the summit worked as a sort of foil for that Kline article in October. Yeah, like, so that's something that Kevin, you wrote about in the piece, and it's we didn't coordinate or like talk about that at all, but it happened to be something that just like perfectly aligned with how I felt about the Kline piece. And like I always thought that what he was describing was accurate, basically, but his kind of the cynical turn and the sort of like New York ain't the same, or art ain't the same, or culture ain't the same. It's a few prominent critics have that view other than Kline. It's just always something that I've disagreed with. Like, yeah, you can kind of lament the fact that, I don't know, film is just, I don't know, maybe a lot of sequels or whatever. But I mean, if you're ignoring things like, even in your own city, like where this culture is manifesting itself in actual meaningful ways, then yeah, I don't know. It seems like kind of a, I don't know, a familiar refrain of lament again. Like people have been saying, lamenting sort of change and whatever their location for basically forever. I guess the Kline argument was that real estate prices in New York are making good art impossible to make, and sort of Kevin's argument was more that a lot of interesting culture is moving online and is maybe less dependent on real estate, and also just that these things kind of find a way. Like I'll let Kevin maybe summarize it how he wants, but yeah, it was something along those lines.
Yeah, basically he was saying like New York's expensive, it's making the art whack, like go to another city. The art community here is dying. I was saying like if art's like not being allowed to thrive in the city, which like I don't know, you can contest in its own right, but like then it's going somewhere, and it's sort of being like marginalized to the internet in like a very literal sense of that term. Just like it's kind of being pushed online. It's cheaper to make art in a digital space than it is in physical space, and it's that increases like the velocity and the interconnectedness of it all. And I think it just makes it like a really fascinating and exciting substrate for art. But then like the art world still comes to play in New York, and those things materialize here. So I guess like the most meaningful question with respect to like your thoughts on the Kline essay is like, does it feel like the situation with New York real estate like makes it difficult or impossible to make art in the city? Or yeah, how does it like shape the reality of that? And then like what role does the internet?
Yeah.
I hate like a low agency take. It's like rent's expensive. It's like, okay, figure it out. Like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm just like, oh, you want to be an artist?
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, I feel like there's this like certain entitlement sometimes around art where it's like, I deserve to get paid because I'm an artist, where it's like, no, you should like figure out how to like get your like things in order so that you can make art. And it's like, I don't know. I feel like that's kind of like a one side of the essay where I was just like, okay, get over yourself a little bit. But then sure, like it is expensive to live here, but I think there's still like art movements happening. I just wonder if like the institutions just aren't invited. You know what I mean? Like I think like maybe it's happening on such a small social scale where it's like these like art critics don't know about it in ways that they maybe were exposed to in the past because artists needed institutions. And I think now like the art community is realizing like, wait, what are we even doing this for? Are we really doing this to like make the white guy happy? Or, you know what I mean? There's just like really like odd taste to the institution that I think like a lot of people are waking up to, that it's like, oh, we could just like get together and like have a summit or have a salon or like have these like art things that celebrate art in the way that like we want to be celebrated, and not in a way that, oh, we need Sotheby's to think we're legit kind of a thing.
Yeah, I kind of think there's like two different things, and maybe Kline's essay is being like, okay, there are these limitations to making art, and that's true. Like if you're trying to make some huge sculpture and then you can't afford space to make that sculpture in New York, then like, yeah, that is a real limitation. Maybe you should go to Missouri, find a warehouse on the cheap and make it. But like to me, and this is what I was saying before, like art isn't really about objects, it's about like social dynamics. And so I actually want these like complex limitations and this social climbing behavior that exists in the art world, and I'm more interested in people interacting with one another than in like making objects. And so for the type of art that I enjoy, you like have to be in New York, and you have to be engaging with the social dynamics of art, and maybe engaging with the institutions in, you know, a positive or negative way, and like around the art scene. And that's more important to me. And so like what I'm interested in is doing things on the internet, doing things where I feel like there's a dense artistic community. But I think if you have different preferences about like what art is, like if you want to do theater with a cast of 50 people in a huge theater, then like, and you really only care about making it, you don't really care that much about who sees it, then of course he would be right. Like you should just go somewhere else.
Yeah. I also think there's an extent to which like traditional art world vantage point, like you spent these years like climbing up this ladder and you look down and you see just like, I don't know, a shittier broken ladder now below you, like the handles have been knocked out or something, because yeah, that's like the vantage point that makes it look like the situation for art in New York is dire, but then you're not like looking over to your left or right or whatever, where someone else has put up a different ladder or has invented a little personal helicopter to fly up or whatever. Like they're like
Right.
different interesting and novel things happening that you just like wouldn't understand from the vantage point of like expecting it to conform to like a certain traditional box or whatever. And again, like, yeah, I want rent in New York to be cheaper. Don't get me wrong. Like, I think there are problems aplenty with that. And like, having lived in multiple other cities, like, yeah, it's fairly insane. But I think it's important to like take that critique and still retain like hope and fight for a place like New York, where I think like the idea of moving to Philly or something like that for any of us is like, with all due respect to Philly, I've got family from there, but like is laughable. That's just not where the network is. That's not where, like, to us, I think I can probably speak for the three of us. Like, New York feels like the most exciting, interesting city in the world, and we're all like super stoked to be here and involved in like art and culture here. Like, there's nowhere else like it.
Period.
Yeah, I think the summit has demonstrated the power of these like communities and these networks, what they're doing with art, and they're kind of pushing it away from object to, that's been happening since conceptualism in the 60s, but it's still in a lot of ways, it's kind of, art is rematerializing in kind of this age of AI, but it's at least it's decentering the importance of like a single kind of immutable object. I'm also pushing art towards these different ideas about aesthetics and formal aesthetics, and more towards ideas about relationships and community. And I think that's really, I don't want to say like the vanguard or whatever, but I think it's definitely some of the more interesting directions that art's getting like tugged and pushed and stretched. And I think the summit and some of similar organizations around the world that kind of share this ethos are some of the things that I think are the most interesting things happening right now. So yeah, what is scene tech? I'm curious about it too.
Do you have an answer yet, Macy? We've been trying to figure it out.
Yeah, scene tech is the way by which you observe scenery, the inputs and outputs of the scene. So tech would be how the scene interacts with society in a meaningful or non-meaningful way. So it's, to me, scene tech is the observation of this phenomenon that is scene.
Yeah, okay, so we're like trying to figure out, we're like obsessed with the scene, the concept of the scene, and like being in the scene, and it's like one of these words that
emerging
doesn't
in the
mean
scene.
anything to us. Like
Yeah.
We love like using a word until it doesn't mean anything. Like AI psychosis doesn't mean anything, grift doesn't mean anything, the scene doesn't mean anything, like because we've just used it into oblivion. So it's like hard for us to define. But like the purpose of the talk is to explore the relationship between the scene and like tech, and like how tech can enable the scene. And so it starts by us figuring out like exactly what the scene is, like what is the social structure of the scene, and then how do people co-opt existing technology in order to create scenes? Because in our view, technology, like popular technologies, does not automatically facilitate a scene. It incentivizes virality, it asks for dilution, and a scene dies with dilution. And so the question is like, how do we create technology that can facilitate tight-knit social groups, ideally IRL? And so the talk will hopefully, if we figure it out within the next like 24 hours, make some proposals for how we can build technology that is more conducive to building scenes.
Is the Shake app the preeminent example of scene tech?
The Shake app is most certainly scene tech, but I think there's just like so much more scene tech to be made.
Oh no, agreed. It's a proof of concept.
I do think that like this kind of like thinking about how tech can be integrated with communities, again, like that's basically exactly what that Glitch residency is about. Like, I mean, it takes place, Glitch is like on or Chateau de Fay is essentially like a commune in France. It's like a communal living space, and like how tech can be integrated into communities because it in ways to just like even form and foster them as they've been disappearing also largely due to tech. So it's like, how can tech kind of like rebuild in a lot of ways what it's helped disappear?
Yeah, totally. I guess the Shake app is sort of a continuation of this social logging practice that I've had for a couple years, where basically my goal is to document real life social interaction. So if two people have the Shake app and they're within, say, 10 feet of each other because it uses Bluetooth and they both shake their phones, they become connected on the Shake app. And then the app spins out a big graph, a big social graph that shows you everyone that you've met, how many unique days you've met them on. And so its goal is to render the social scene more navigable. And so the idea is that you want to take your in real life interactions and kind of like seamlessly put them on a platform that allows you to understand them. And then now kind of the next step for the Shake app is allowing people to use the platform to facilitate IRL connection. So going in the other direction. So I'm really excited about it. It's like the mesh of all of the things that I'm interested in. I'm like obsessed with social graphs. I really like events and scenes and stuff like that. So I'm just honing in on that.
Yeah, it's like, and it has like leaderboards and stuff like that. It's like taking a lot of the social media like gamification elements and kind of like switching the sign, like flipping them to facilitating IRL engagement rather than like isolating people, as so much of like technology has happened to do, like very directly. It's like you need to be with other people in order to use this app. And it's just got like a level of delight to it that can be rather addicting. Like I want to be shaking with you guys right now.
I know.
I know. It's so sad that we're not physically together, so we can't shake.
I was gonna say like there should be some like ability for it to like recognize your face or something like that, but I think that's a bastardization.
That's totally antithetical to
physically
the
immune. Yeah. Agreed. Wait, Matt, this just occurred to me. Would PMI be considered scene tech?
Yeah, I think we came to the conclusion that scene tech is a way of people interacting with each other and technology. So like a product can like Twitter can be scene tech if you use it right. Instagram can be scene tech if you use it right. But these platforms are not like built as scene tech. But I would say like TMI is scene tech for sure.
I mean, yeah, TMI was like very deliberately like go up to people in person and like tap this card and build your social graph from that, and then like refer more people into the network, blah blah blah, to be interviewed and such and such.
Yeah, it's that same instinct as the Cottagecore kind of return to the analog and return to like IRL physical maybe things and experiences. But it's interesting. It's not like disavowing tech in any kind of in its ability to facilitate those connections. It's trying to actually harness them, which is probably like what separates it from something like a Cottagecore or something. Yeah. But a similar impulse that I think we just as a society are all kind of feeling. And yeah, it's interesting how it's manifesting itself with and without tech and in all these different and interesting ways. So that's super interesting. Yeah, like and it like that kind of idea about relational aesthetics or cyber relational aesthetics, I think is very connected to like just tying technology to communities. And yeah, it's really interesting. And I think that's kind of perfectly in like a couple words, so like sums up what the summit did and is doing. And I guess like do you want to talk about like this will come out on Friday? Do you want to talk about like anything about like what's next or any of that, or are you kind of waiting to announce anything later? But if you want to say anything about that, you can talk about what's next.
I would say mostly probably personal stuff. Like the AI Psychosis Summit team is cooking on things that we're not going to speak about yet, but Matt and I are doing a talk at Fest on Friday. So probably
the day this comes out.
So if you're watching today, look for the Fest talk. And then I'm a visual artist and I also do scene tech. I'm at Gettles on everything. My website's gettles.co.
Yeah, there are some like potential AI Psychosis Summit events like coming up, which we don't really like speak on. But I guess I would say like if you think the AI Psychosis Summit was electric and you're interested in that, I think like the one thing that's important, I think that some people don't understand is that the electricity of the AI Psychosis Summit was that it was agile and it capitalized on something. And so the next AI Psychosis Summit isn't going to be about AI psychosis. It's going to be about something totally different. Like, it's going to happen because like there are people who want to queen out and who are pro-social and who are curious. The next AI Psychosis Summit is not an AI Psychosis Summit.
Damn.
Do you want to show the shake?
Rug on yourselves.
Oh yeah, but download Shake and go on Quasimatt.com.
Yeah. Yeah, check out quasimatt.com/social. Oh yeah, I forgot to even mention that I did a Quasimatt homage as part of the show, but whatever.
Yeah.
As for myself, I'm in this period where I have an AI model trained on myself making art in my stead. It will be having some releases coming up. It's had like a smaller trickle where I've done like a couple small things like for the summit and a couple other like group shows and stuff, but there will eventually be bigger releases around that. And then I have a lot of like writing stuff coming out because since I can't make art, I need to do something else with my time. And so yeah, I had the essay that just came out with you all, which I'd love for everyone to go and read. And then I'll have a few interviews I've done with some people coming out soon. And then I wrote a World Cup essay that is on like American culture and politics and the World Cup and the future of the game here. Very just totally unrelated to like any of my art stuff. I basically passed this essay along to my model agent. And I've basically created a system where like anything I'm doing or experiencing is being fed to this model. So it has as much context around my life as possible. Because I think so much like creativity is a matter of like rootedness in one's own existence. And so I'm trying to replicate that within this agentic copy of myself. And so, yeah, it was privy to this essay and has developed like a series of art pieces to go along with it, releasing sometime soon. TBD exactly.
Definitely, yeah, check out Kevin's site and Substack and Matt and Macy's. And for the summit, it's psychosis.nyc. And then, of course, Kevin wrote what was the AI Psychosis Summit for us. So please check out that piece on Laurandom editorials. And yeah, thank you all three so much. It was great. I hope to catch one of these summits somewhere in the world at some point soon. And yeah, lovely to meet you all. And yeah, thank you so much for the chat today.
Appreciate it, Peter.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
See you guys.
Thanks.